What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod, episode number 130, a nice round number for you all. I'm Kyle Morello, Jake Copestick, my normal co-host, and we have another special guest today and a friend of the pod as we keep the preseason previews rolling on. I think for the fourth time, we can go back and look though, but a friend of the pod nonetheless, Tommy Godin of the Full 40, here to break down Villanova and the Big East. Tommy, how's it going, my friend?
Good, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always fun.
Absolutely. This feels right. Having you on here talking Villanova basketball.
It does. Talking
before
to you guys
another
feels like
season.
basketball season, right?
It's getting cold outside. You know, we're in the low 60s, high 50s, maybe even mid 50s consistently now. So it's feeling like basketball. Most people associate it with college football. I do too. But college basketball is right here upon us. So why don't we get right into it, guys? We're going to do like we did the first two with Drexel and Penn. We're going to break down the team first. We're going to get into the conference after that. And in the middle, we'll squeeze in some expectations for the team as a whole. But Tommy, let's get right into it. Let's start, I think, at the top first before anything else, because a new man is in charge on the main line this year, and that's Kevin Willard coming over from Maryland after a few seasons there. He's back in the Big East. Of course, he was the head coach up at Seton Hall, and now he's back, and this Villanova team is new, and it's exciting. There's a couple returning faces, but mostly all new players, some intercity transfers, which we'll get into. But first and foremost, Tommy, what do you think of Kevin Willard, one, being in charge of this team, and then two, expectations for not necessarily his tenure, but at least year one of it to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely weird, right? It was a bit of a sloppy departure out of Maryland this offseason. And, you know, Willard's a guy that we go back to our college, our high school days, and maybe even our middle school days. We go back, we were watching Big East basketball, Villanova basketball. And Willard's a guy you grew up, you see him on the other side of the bench, and you had a certain type of feeling towards Kevin Willard, and now he's on your side of the bench. So it definitely is going to take some getting used to. At least it did for me. But no, I'm really excited for him being here, for his direction of the program. It's one of the things that I'm going to talk a lot about tonight is roller coasters. But this season is going to be a roller coaster. The next couple seasons are going to be roller coasters, but that's nothing Villanova fans should not be accustomed to after the past couple of years.
Right on. Well, first of all, Kyle, I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for introducing me. You might have skipped over that. But I wanted to show off my T-shirt, my throwback Big East logo T-shirt. You didn't give me a chance, unfortunately. Regardless,
that's an oversight on my part. But I figured after the first two, I think people know how you are doing. But apologies, still. I should always ask how you're doing.
Yeah. Anyway, this is an upgrade over Kyle Neptune. It's just apparent that was not working out through 3 years with Kevin Willard. Big thing that stuck out. You know, if you listen to his press conference and you watch his teams play, as Tommy's talking about, and you remember those Isaiah Whitehead teams, and you remember the Angel Delgado teams, and you remember the Miles Powell teams, and with guys like that, very, very ferocious, very, very tough, city guards, gritty, and that's what he wants to bring here, preaching that nobody will play harder than them in his opening press conference. And I think it'll take a little bit to get rolling. They have injuries. It might be a slow start out of the gate with the strength of schedule that they're going to play. Three very hard. They're not going to play. They're going to play Pittsburgh at home, but they're going to get BYU in Vegas to open the season on national TV. They have to go to Michigan. They have to go to Wisconsin. And with a team that's probably going to be missing Devin Askew and maybe even Zion Stanford this early, might be rocky to start. But this is an upgrade. He knows the conference. He knows the area. And I've had my doubts about Kevin Willard, Kyle. I have said that, but he is an upgrade over what they had. And although they were picked 7th out of the 11 teams in the preseason, I will get into it later, Kyle. I think this is a team that's going to outperform expectations and maybe even break the streak that they've had with no NCAA tournament. And hence, break the Big Five streak with no teams in the tournament.
Yeah, we are in a little bit of a streak, which we'll get into during our Big Five preview at the end of all these previews that we do for every conference, every team. But yes, I do. It is exciting to to have a coach of his stature and his success and track record be at the helm now. And, no offense to Kyle Neptune, he was, a consummate pro from all accounts and everything that we've seen over the last 3 years. But like you said, Cope, this is an upgrade. He just didn't get it done. And this isn't, a feel good, kind of school where you can kind of skate by with 21 seasons and missing expectations a little bit. This is Villanova basketball. This is what people were arguing just a few years ago as, the next wave of blue blood. And I do think they got there, winning 2 championships in, a few year span or a couple year span. So yeah, the expectations are high, maybe not so much in year one, because I think a foundation has to be set for sustained success. And we'll get into that as well, but, definitely excited for this tenure for sure. Speaking of sustained success, say that 5 times fast. There's a player I want to get into first to kick off kind of our player previews of this Villanova team, and that's Caden Lewis, the freshman, top 50 recruit from the DC area. It seems like he's going to be immediately thrust into not only the starting lineup, but even as one of the key contributors for this Villanova team in terms of the scoring load and everything like that. So, Tommy, I want to go to you first. How exciting is it to have a new freshman like this on campus Villanova? Because in the olden days of Jay Wright, you had the Jay Wright system, the Jay Wright way, where it was all upperclassmen who were mainly, I shouldn't say all, but mainly getting the shine and working their way up to be in a position where they can be contributors. Now you have someone who's, top 50 recruit coming in year one, and it's going to be asked of seemingly a decent amount. So what are your thoughts on Caden Lewis in his freshman year?
Caden Lewis is awesome. I'm so glad that this was the first question, or one of the first questions that we let off with, because I could wax poetic about Caden Lewis's game all evening. To be quite frank, he plays well beyond his years. He's a great teammate. He's so smart with the basketball. He's one of, we haven't seen him play an official game yet, right? We've seen 2 exhibitions. There's reports from practices. There's all his high school tape. But if we're not speculating about incoming freshmen, then what are we doing in October? You know what I mean? So, Villanova hasn't had a shortage of talented incoming freshmen coming in recently with Cam Whitmore and the Mark Armstrongs of the world. But Caden Lewis is right up there, man. He's got just a flashy play potential. He's a leader, which is incredibly rare to see from an incoming freshman. Like, some of the guys just rally around him, and he has this infectious energy. And he's a player that is going to be good this year and great in the future for this team.
Tommy, I'll start with that before I get into a little more of his game as well. I maybe a bold take here. I don't know if this guy's going to have much of a future at Villanova, and that's not an indictment on him at all. That is, in fact, because I think he might be going to the NBA draft after this year. If you look at the freshmen in this conference, Braylon Mullins from Connecticut was the preseason freshman of the year pick. He's now out for multiple weeks, could miss up to a month, if not more, of the non-conference slate. So then you have a Caden Lewis, because you look at St. John's, and Rick Pitino is not going to play the freshman a lot. That's why he loads up with the old players in the portal. You have Marquette kind of built the same way, not taking from the portal, but developing from within. Freshmen will get in there, but it's those upperclassmen that have developed that are going to play the minutes. You have Creighton, another team, transfer portal, brought in a bunch of guys this year, has their own internal development guys coming up. Like, the path is there for a Caden Lewis to win preseason freshman, to win Big East freshman of the year. He's going to have the keys from day one. I think he's going to play well enough. It's going to be very hard for Kevin Willard to have to switch a Devin Askew in the starting lineup, or just have him play, just have a Caden Lewis sub out and sit more. Like, I think this is a guy that's going to play the bulk of the minutes very quickly. I think he's going to win the starting point guard job, but he's not going to give it back. Athleticism, size, flash, quickness. There's a ton to like about this guy's game. I think he's taking that point guard role from day one, and we'll add him to a list of very good freshmen who have played for Villanova. I'm not saying he's like one of these guys, but you think, Tommy, who plays for Villanova as a freshman? Well, if your name's Jalen Brunson or Mikal Bridges, you might play a lot of minutes as a freshman. It doesn't happen to many people, but this guy was a steal. With all the players that Kentucky brought in, for a Caden Lewis to decommit and then to commit to Villanova, where Willard and his staff had recruited him so hard. This was a steal, one of the best late pickups in the portal. Excuse me, even though he was a freshman in the offseason, one of the best pickups. He's going to be one of the, if not the best player on this team, I think. I think that much of this guy and his game, the role he's going to be thrust into, I think he's going to meet the moment here. And if Villanova is going to be a good team and a tournament team, Caden Lewis is going to be the reason why.
Yep.
Cool. You mentioned someone I want to talk about too. Devin Askew, another player transferring in here. And he's been with a bunch of teams, Kentucky, Texas, Cal. Last season with Long Beach State, filled up the stat sheet, one of the best players in the Big West. Now he's coming in here, and we'll see. I mean, he's, like you said, Kobe's going to be out, for the first little bit of the season with an injury, but another player who's projected to be in the starting lineup, who's projected to have a lot of the scoring load. Cope, I know you've talked about him before, so I want to start with you. What are your thoughts on Devin Askew potentially being alongside Caden Lewis in the starting backcourt eventually in this Nova season?
Yeah, listen, he's put up a lot of numbers at Long Beach State, and then the last 2 years at Cal. Those teams are not very good. Last year under Chris Acker, Long Beach State, in the first year under Chris Acker coming over from San Diego State, was a sub 300 team in Ken Pom. Now he had the ball in his hands a lot. Conference play was very good, not only shooting the ball but distributing as well. To get an older guy like that, I think is exactly what you're looking for in the portal. My thing is, Kyle, he just does not have those same numbers, and he had a high usage rate. He played a lot of the minutes last year for Long Beach. When he's been at his stops at Texas, at Kentucky, and yes, he was in a power conference, still in a power conference the last 2 years at California. There's just not those same numbers that he put up when he had the ball in his hands a lot at Long Beach State, and playing against the top tier competition, it just wasn't as good. This is a huge step up coming from the Big West. And look, he's played in power conferences before, but he's already has an injury. He's going to be banged up coming into the year. Who knows? It sounds like, he's going to miss that first month, if not more. A guy like, again, the numbers just are not as good against the top competition. And therefore, I think a guy like a Caden Lewis, who is going to have the role, is going to have the keys handed to him right away. Like, I think Devin Askew was brought in to be the guy who's going to start, play alongside him, potentially take that spot from him. I just don't know if he's going to get it, because I think a Caden Lewis is going to play that well. But in the portal, you get a guy that's going to be playing his sixth year. You get an older guy, which is huge. But again, Kyle, this is a really, really good conference. Yes, they might not have the money that the SEC or the Big 12 has. This is a grind of a conference, and Villanova's playing a really hard schedule this year. So he's not going to put up those numbers. It's a great ad for an older veteran player. When you look at a Chris Jeffrey and a Caden Lewis, there's some youth at the guard spot. You can rely on an older player. But those gaudy numbers that he put up at Long Beach State last year, his previous stops, just was not like that all the time when he had to step up.
Tommy, how about you?
Yeah, I think Jake really hit the nail on the head there. What Devin Askew is going to bring is experience and veteran leadership. Going off of what he said, Villanova has a lot of young talent on this team. Malachi Palmer, Caden Lewis, Chris Jeffrey, Bryce Lindsey's young. I mean, this team legitimately 10 or 11 players deep, and a lot of them are really, really young. So this season is going to be a little bit bumpy, but to have a guy like Devin Askew, hasn't played at the highest level. And again, what Cope was saying about these numbers that he put up, he averaged 19 at Long Beach State last year. Don't expect it to be anywhere near that in the Big East this year, but I think he brings some size in the guard room. I think he brings some versatility on and off the basketball, but most importantly, he brings leadership and to a team where it's extremely young, especially in the guard room. That's going to be more valuable than I think what he puts on the stat sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to get into one more player who likely will be in the starting lineup before getting to some complimentary pieces and your thoughts on different guys. But I want to talk about Matthew Hodge, who we've not seen play college basketball yet because he has not played college basketball yet. He was ruled ineligible later in the offseason last year due to an academic rule, which Tommy, you see you shaking your head. And Cope, I know I've seen you shake your head about it. I still don't get it to this day. But nonetheless, he is a freshman still retaining that eligibility, and he will be playing this year. So he was a highly touted recruit last year, 6'8" forward, versatile. We just haven't seen him play an official game yet in Division I college basketball. So Tommy, we'll start with you. What can Villanova fans expect from this guy who they might have forgotten about in the last year, considering he was ineligible and sat out all of the 24-25 season?
Certainly, yeah. Thank you so much for bringing him up. I was going to talk about him here shortly. I'm incredibly high on Matthew Hodge. Listening to what everybody was saying about him last year in the workouts and in practice, they were saying that he was one of the better players on the floor last year in practices. Now, I think him sitting out a year and getting accustomed to the Villanova way, even though that got turned upside down this past offseason, is valuable for him. He saw the speed of the college game. He adjusted. He worked all year with a college basketball team. He's going to start on this team. He brings some good size. He brings shooting. This team their biggest weakness is rebounding, and it's a big weakness. They're going to get killed on the glass all year. But Matt Hodge, even at forward, is one of the team's better rebounders. So expect some gritty plays. He's a good defender, good shooter, and can finish at a high level as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to address the reason he had to sit out last year, which is a totally ridiculous. Baseless claim from the NCAA. Every time they asked for something from Villanova, they provided it for him, and still he had to sit out. I guess it's not the worst thing in the world that college weight room, all the things that Tommy said, be around the team, absorb practice, be out there. I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. And he's still with the coach that recruited him hard, I think, is another thing too. Like this was a situation he was happy to be in when Kevin Willard got here because he had recruited him so hard. But Hodge, the versatility, Tommy brings up the rebounding, which we can get into, but the size, the versatility, when he committed to Villanova under the Kyle Neptune regime, it was very easy to tell why he committed there and why they wanted him so bad. This is what a Villanova player looks like. He's big, he's long, versatile offensively, versatile defensively. That sounds like a Villanova Wildcat to me. And I think he's going to come back with a vengeance after what happened with them last year. But so much to like about his game. Space the floor, can be a guy that can play the four, spread you out, help rebounding, help inside. Excited for this guy. Was going to be excited for him last year because I thought he was going to play, but even more so this year, maybe a little bit bigger, being a guy that's been in a college weight room setting for a year as well. It's a good situation for him. They're going to need his size, especially at that four spot. I think is an interesting swing position that he's going to need to fill that role. But I think it's a big year coming for Matthew Hodge. People may have forgotten about him because he didn't play last year, and all you did was see him in a polo, which shouldn't have been that way. But regardless, they're going to need him in a lot of ways, and I think he's ready to step in and really from day one could be that guy that plays the four.
Yeah, like you both said, I think, not that we wanted him to be ineligible last year, and again, it was an extremely silly thing that it happened, but it could be a silver lining that, like you guys both said, he got to be in a college weight room for a year, he got to see the ropes, and now he'll be even better than people thought he was going to be in his year one, and he'll still be in his first year in college basketball retaining that freshman eligibility. So that's going to be huge for him, and I think it's going to be huge for this Villanova team as well. All right, I want to get some thoughts on some guys who maybe people aren't necessarily expecting so much to be as much of a contributor as maybe you guys think. So, Tommy, I want you to go first. Who are a couple guys that you're looking at on this Villanova team who maybe people aren't either talking about as much or who you're excited for to fit into this Kevin Willard system in year one?
Yeah, two guys who frankly nobody was talking about up until their televised scrimmage against UVA that I want to bring up is Malachi Palmer and Chris Jeffrey. I was extremely high on Chris Jeffrey coming out of high school. He is a bull in a china shop. He's built like he's been in college for 5 years already, but he can shoot it. He can shoot the ball too. These guys play extremely similarly. They can cut, they can dribble, they can drive, they can pass, they can rebound. They're both Swiss Army knives, and they're both freshmen. Malachi Palmer's a redshirt freshman, but they still have 4 years of eligibility left. So I really think that they can contribute to this team this year, and as it goes on, really step up and be good for the Wildcats down the road.
You stole one of mine, Tommy, because I was going to bring up Chris Jeffrey, who followed Kevin Willard, was originally committed to Maryland, then went to Villanova to follow him. You're right on the money with your description of him. I think it's rare that you see guys like this that are that big and strong and physically ready. Rare that you see a guy from the high school level come up to the college level, and in a world where there's some 5th and 6th year guys that have been in the weight room that long can contend and compete right away. And Chris,
he looks like a linebacker.
He's built like a sack of flour. This guy, he's solid. It's not going to bother him right away, the physicality. Defensively, I think especially on the ball, this guy is going to be a pest for other teams. And he's another guy, just like a Caden Lewis. He's going to get the opportunity to play a lot, and he's going to get the opportunity to be in there. And with both of them, there'll be ups, there'll be downs. But I think this is a very good duo of young players that Villanova has. But I see this team. I see some offense when they're fully healthy. Zion Stanford, Devin Askew, Bryce Lindsey, and a Caden Lewis as well. But I think defensively is where Chris Jeffrey's really going to make his mark. Nice size for the point guard spot, and again on the ball, I think this guy's really going to give people issues even in year one. So he's real important, and especially Tommy with the injuries early on in the year, this guy's going to get thrown in the fire against some really really good guards right away and some really good perimeter players. So that was the guy for me. You stole him from me, but yeah, really good player for Kevin Willard and his staff to bring from, even though he didn't play a game at Maryland, to bring him from Maryland to Villanova being a commit was huge. He's going to get the opportunity to play right away. And again, I think he's going to meet the opportunity against some really, really good competition.
Fair enough. I got a couple too. Cope, you mentioned one of them, Bryce Lindsey, who I'm surprised you didn't talk more about, but it'll give me the opportunity to talk more about him, so why not? Formerly from A&M, Texas A&M, that is, obviously, went to James Madison this past year, sixth man and newcomer of the year in the Sun Belt, 41% from three, just about. Like you mentioned, Cope, like this team is not really going to be that short on offense. Like I think they might have struggled at times the last couple of years with offense, or at least consistently getting offense. This year, I think they're going to be in a lot better position. I think Bryce Lindsey is a big reason why. Will he start? Will he come off the bench? Most likely coming off the bench. Who's to say? But I think having someone like that available as your seventh man, let's say, I think is huge. And even when everyone's healthy too, he'll still be a major contributor coming off the bench and being a sharpshooter. And it's invaluable to a college basketball team, especially one like Villanova. So really, really excited for him. And then Tommy, you mentioned rebounding will probably be a struggle for this Villanova team. And I do agree. But I think there's one guy besides Matthew Hodge who might be able to help with that. It's Braden Pierce. 7-footer. He's only played in a few college games in his career, even though he's been around for a couple years, although he's a sophomore this year. But I think if he can, I don't know how many minutes I'm expecting him to contribute this year, but I do think if he is in there, he can be another rebounding presence, being a 7-footer. Despite it being high major college basketball, you don't get a lot of like true 7-footers. Most of the time they're going to the league or they're going somewhere overseas or whatever. So there's not a lot of true 7-foot talent I feel like out there, and having that is extremely valuable. So will he play a lot remains to be seen, but I do think that can be someone who if he plays 10 to 12 minutes a game, he could be someone, or if not more, someone who could contribute to that weakness as well. And that kind of transitions to my next point I want to ask you guys. Tommy, again, you mentioned the weakness of this team potentially being rebounding. What would you say is a strength for this team that, fans can look out for going into the season and be like, these guys talked about that, and that's something that we can hang our hats on as kind of a team identity going into the year?
Depth. This team is going to be extremely deep. Like I mentioned earlier, they're going to be 10, 11 guys deep. So they're going to be able to play fast, play physical, play hard, because they got a sub coming in for them right off the bench. So I think depth is definitely this team's strong suit. I think shooting can be as well. They got a lot of different guards that can space the floor, that can hit it from beyond the arc. Like you mentioned, Bryce Lindsey, we didn't talk about him a lot. He can shoot the cover off the ball, 41% last year. I think he set JMU's all-time record for threes in a season as well last year. He was outstanding down there, James Madison last year. Someone we haven't talked about, Tafara Gapare, coming over from Maryland, an extremely late addition. He didn't really start shooting threes until the tail end of last year at Maryland, and he connected at a decent rate. I'm not saying he's a sharpshooter, but he's someone with size that can stretch the floor a little bit. So I do think that shooting could be positive for this team, but depth is really going to be a thing that they hang their hat on.
I'd look at athleticism as well, Tommy. You mentioned the depth, and I see a really good amount of athletes here. When they get healthy, but you have Chris Jeffrey, you have Bryce Lindsey, a quick dude who's got a quick trigger from the three-point line, but can beat people as well. You look at Tafara Gapara, Malachi Palmer. You have Big Nico, who I don't know how much he's going to play this year, but even with a Caden Lewis and Hodge, I see some athleticism here on the perimeter and at the three, maybe the four, that I think could maybe offset the rebounding just a little bit, and maybe something they'll have to rely on a little bit. Out athlete people when you can, length, the vertical, the pop and the bounce these guys have to get you some rebounds because they are a little thin at center, which I'd like to talk about next, Kyle. I hope I'm leading you into your next point. But yeah, Tommy's absolutely right. I think the shooting is there just as any Villanova team would. I think you'd be very confused if you saw a Villanova team that was pounding it inside. And not that they're not going to get to the rim. They don't have guys that can get there. But if everything was at the basket and at the rim, I think you'd be a little confused that they're not putting up a lot of threes and spacing the floor. But I think very quietly, there's a lot of athleticism and some length on this team that could maybe counteract the lack of top-end 7-foot size they have.
Yeah, and both are good points. And Tommy kind of expanding off yours. I think backcourt depth in particular, massive with this team. We haven't even mentioned at all Tyler Perkins yet, who is going to be a major contributor for this team. Was a 6th, 7th man last year. Really good shooter. Obviously, inner city Big 5 transfer a couple years ago, so we know him well from his first 2 years. But now, especially being an upperclassman too, someone we haven't even really mentioned at all. Zion Stanford, we mentioned a little bit too. Another one coming over from Temple. I know Cope, you mentioned he's going to be hurt a little bit to start the year, so we won't see him for a little bit. But another guy who will contribute in the backcourt. We mentioned Bryce Lindsey. We mentioned Malachi Palmer. And then obviously the guys, starting in Devin Askew and Caden Lewis. So, you're talking about 6 or so guards right there who are all going to contribute. That's a major factor, especially, and we say it every March, and when it comes around, that guard play is huge when it comes to that time in the conference and NCAA tournaments. If they get there, this team's suited for that. So there will be issues that they'll have to address, which I'm sure we're about to get to because I'm going to be the one to ask that. But I think guard depth is huge for them. But of course, when we talk about strengths, we also have to talk about weaknesses. So before we kind of get into a season outlook and a Big East outlook, my last question to you guys before we transfer over to that, Tommy, you mentioned rebounding, but what else besides that, and then Cope for you as well, is a weakness that fans have to look out for this year?
Yeah, rebounding is definitely going to be the number one weakness for this team. But I think defense is going to be another weakness for this team, which is a bit ironic because defense and rebounding is what Kyle Neptune preached ad nauseum in his tenure at Villanova. But going off what Cope said, they do have a lot of athletes. They are extremely athletic. They can play fast. They can play hard. they should not be scared of foul trouble at all year because of the amount of dudes that they have, but they don't have many pure defenders. For as good as Bryce Lindsey can shoot it, he was a net negative defender on some of these metrics websites. I don't know how Devin Askew's game is going to translate from a low major to a high major on the defensive end. So there's some big question marks on the defensive end. It was weird seeing University of Virginia play with any semblance of pace during their scrimmage against Villanova. But when Virginia started pushing the pace a little bit, Villanova made a lot of mistakes, a lot of blown coverages, which is, I mean, you can come to expect from a team that's featuring 11 new guys, but it's going to be rough, especially early. I think by mid-December, things will be smoothed over a little bit, but communication on the defensive end is something I'm going to look out for early on.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that. There's so many new guys as well, and I think that's the one spot where, like, it could be a little clunky on both ends, but especially like with a new coach and a whole bunch of new guys, that's something that they're going to have to figure out. And at times, Tommy, I get that this is a totally different team, but at times the Villanova turned the ball over and they don't, they couldn't set their defense. They were great offensively last year shooting the ball, but as much as Kyle Neptune preached the defense and the rebounding, it wasn't there all the time defensively. And one more thing I'd like to throw in there is rim protection. And I want to touch on Duke Brennan. I'll just touch on rim protection before we touch on him. But as good as he was for Grand Canyon, for a very good Grand Canyon team that made the tournament and lost to Kevin Willard and his Maryland team, this is a giant step up from the WAC, where they were just out-talenting, out everything their opponents. So, yes, he was 22nd in his own conference in block percentage. And just with that, like, there's not really much behind them as far as center depth goes. You have Duke Brennan, who you're asking a lot of to play a lot of minutes and to make a huge jump. I don't doubt that he can, because he's very good in a lot of different areas that we'll get in on. But he's got to make a huge leap here. And there's going to be a lot asked of him with the lack of depth. If Big Nico is not ready and not expected a whole lot, well, you have 2 7-footers then. We have Braden Pierce and Duke Brennan. And with Braden Pierce, you don't have the college sample size to go off of. And with Duke Brennan, he's making a seismic leap in terms of confidence here. So not only defense, but anchoring that defense, the rim protection remains to be seen, just because we don't have any proven really track record against really good competition for either Braden Pierce or Duke Brennan.
Yeah, a lot to not that there's a lot to be left desired. We don't know yet, but when you don't have as much depth in, relies on 2 guys and maybe 3 later, it can be a slippery slope. For me, kind of just a little bit summarize your 2 points, but unfamiliarity, I think, is kind of the biggest thing here. Tommy, like you mentioned, 11 new guys, brand new head coach, new system, all new assistants except for Ash Howard. So it's just a lot of unfamiliarity. I mean, I shouldn't say every time, but a lot of times when teams are successful, especially at the high major level, and you see them go far in the tournament, one thing you can always look back to is minutes continuity, and teams that have, I don't remember the exact number from the tournament last year, but I think of the 1 seeds that all made the Final Four, everyone except Duke was in like a top tier percentage of returning minutes from the year before. And I forget the exact number. What it is right now. It was a tweet that I saw in March, but obviously, the end of that Duke Houston game, I think, is a big, indicator of that, just how that all unfolded. I know it was kind of a 1 in a million thing that happened there, but I think unfamiliarity is probably, other than the things you guys mentioned, this team's biggest weakness, just because, 11 new guys and a new coach, it's hard, but you don't know what can happen. They can gel and they can figure it out, and that will come down to coaching and the players being coachable. And I think the staff is definitely capable of it, but it's just something that they're going to have to figure out and they're going to have to see as the season continues on. So now let's get into some predictions for this Villanova team before we move on to the Big East as a whole. They were picked 7th in the Big East Conference in the coaches poll. A lot of people in the media probably are agreeing with that sentiment, that they'll be they won't be a basement seller, bottom seller of the Big East, but they'll not be contending for a Big East championship this year. Tommy, Cope, Tommy, we'll start with you. Do you guys agree with that? And where do you think they will finish in the Big East this year?
Yeah, I do. I agree with 7. 7 seems fair. And do I think that they could push Georgetown at 6 and Marquette at 5 to win a couple of games? Sure. I do think that they could finish there, but I think 5 is really their ceiling. I think Providence getting Jason Edwards and returning Oswin Erumzier at number 4. I think the top 4 in this conference is locked up. I think Villanova's ceiling is 5. This is going to be a team that can win some games that they shouldn't win, and they're going to lose some games that they shouldn't lose. This is going to be a roller coaster kind of a year for Villanova. Again, nothing that the fans aren't accustomed to. This is going to be a really young team with a lot of growing pains, especially early on. Hopefully, as the year progresses, they can play better basketball towards the end of the year. But yeah, I do think 7th is fair for them in the conference, hoping for a better finish and more continuity as the season goes along. But I think down the road, this team, if they can bring back some of these core pieces, is going to be really, really good and really fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tommy. I think that they could finish, and this isn't a bold prediction by any means, but just depending on what happens with Georgetown, with the caliber of players they lose. I like who they're bringing in, and we can discuss that further. But I think 6th. 6th is where I'm going to stick them, right smack in the middle of the conference. The top 4, I don't think they're going to break the top 3 unless there's catastrophic injuries. I think it's very clear that UConn and St. John's are in a tier of their own on the top, Creighton not far behind them. This is a massive, massive year for Kim English and Providence. Marquette, its own internal development that they have, which I think is super interesting when you see the slew of transfers that every single team in this conference brings in. But I think 6th. They're not going to crack that top 4. I think Tommy's absolutely right. 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. I think it'll be 6th. They'll play number 11 just as they did last year in the first round of the tournament. But the inconsistency is going to be there. Tommy's absolutely right. And with the injuries they have and these young guys playing, they're going to get thrown right into the fire against a BYU team with the potential number 1 pick in AJ DeBanza on the road, which that BYU team is great. Kevin Young is a really good coach. They have Rob Wright from Philly, who was at Baylor last year. Very good team. Then you have to go on the road. Here's another one, Tommy, that could give them issues. When they got to go to Michigan and play against the Adai Mara and Yaxel Lendeborg Twin Towers, but as a true road game at the Chrysler Center, that could be that's going to be a really tough one. And they're going to have to go play Wisconsin, who nobody expected anything from last year. Played BYU in the tournament, and one of the best games that was there, had a 3 seed. So early on, you're going to see, I know there's nothing to do with conference play. That will prepare them. That will give them, that you're going to find out a lot about them early. But a very good Big East once again, especially at the top. There will always be your Seton Halls or whoever that will knock somebody off. They will probably be on the losing end of one of them just because that's the parity and the volatility of the conference. But just as they were the last 2 years under Kyle Neptune, this team will be playing meaningful games in late February, early March that will determine their fate. I'm leaning on the side of no at the moment, but they will be. I firmly believe this team will be there when the tournament bracket comes out. This team will be in the mix for, I think, one of the last 8 berths to get in. It's a coaching upgrade. There's some roster kinks they're going to have to work out with all the new guys and the young players and injuries, but they can finish middle of the pack, which is a very good top of this conference, and potentially set themselves up to make the tournament. Right now, I'm going to say no. I need to see them play. Scrimmages are great. They don't mean anything to me. You got to win it on the court when the games matter and the lights are on. So 6th place right now for me, tournament, they will be right on that edge come March, Kyle.
Yeah, I think I got to agree with you. Whether it's 6th place or 7th place or, anywhere in that middle of the pack, I think that is where they end up. I do think they missed the tournament, although you're not going to say I would be surprised if they do end up making it. I think Tommy, you talked about the ceiling and Cope U2 being around 5th. I think if they end up that and they can make a little bit of a run in the Big East tournament, I do think they'll get in. But Right now, if you ask me, I would say no. They won't get in, but I do think it's going to be a development year. There's a lot of young players on this team. Yes, there's some seniors that they brought in and some upperclassmen as well, but this team skews young, and I think this is going to be a year for Kevin Willard to establish his way of doing things. That's not necessarily the Villanova way that we've seen for the last 20-something years. So I think it will be more of that, at least in what I think Kevin Willard's thinking. Obviously, he's going to want to win games and make the tournament. That's extremely important. But I think that's ultimately what will end up happening, is it'll be more of a developmental year for this Villanova team. So you guys mentioned the Big East. Why don't we talk some Big East basketball as a whole here? You mentioned St. John's. You mentioned UConn. We kind of did a little bit debrief of where teams might end up in the standings, but let's get into it a little bit more, and then we'll wrap up this episode here. But Cope, we'll start with you now. Do a little reverse here. At the end of the day, when it's second week of March and the Big East tournament starting, where do you see the Big East unfolding? And then at the end of that week, who do you see being the automatic qualifier for the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, well, I'll give you my top half of the conference before I pass it down to Tommy here. I have St. John's at 1, Connecticut at 2. It's very close, but give the nod to St. John's. Also, Connecticut banged up to start the year as well, and my lord, they have a gauntlet of a non-conference schedule. I have Creighton at 3, Providence at 4, Marquette at 5, and I think look, Shaka Smart gets the benefit of the doubt for me. I'd even maybe interchange Providence and Marquette. Providence is a ton of talent, but Shaka, again, it's a very interesting case study. Does not bring in any transfers. A very good team last year. They unfortunately lose to Donovan Dent, New Mexico, first round of the tournament. I think they could move into 4 and knock Providence back a spot. And I think Villanova at 6, Georgetown at 7. Very close, though, in the middle of the pack. Then I have DePaul at 9, Xavier 8, Butler 10, 11, Seton Hall. Not a huge change from the preseason standings. But the top half, I'll break down St. John's, Connecticut real quick, and then I'll pass it on to Tommy. But St. John's, Kyle, and I want to put this on record, Ian Jackson is going to be one of the most important players in the entire country this year. He can unlock this team as the preseason top 10, top 5 team as we know it, if he can be that point guard. Now, Rick Pitino says he doesn't. There is no point guards anymore. A little worrisome because you need those to be really good in March. But if Ian Jackson can be that point guard, that decision maker for them offensively, with more shooting, with Joe Sanan from Arizona State, with those Sellers from Stanford, with Hopkins coming over in conference, and if he's fully healthy, can be a dominant player in this league. You have Dylan Mitchell, a superstar athlete, filling that Aaron Scott role, albeit not the shooter he is. And then you have Zuby Ejiofor for the preseason player of the year. Deeper run than they did last year. They have the shooting, they have the offense, but offensively with Ian Jackson, but defensively with a lineup of Ian Jackson, Isaiah Sellers, Bryce Hopkins, Dylan Mitchell, and Zuby Ejiofor potentially. No guys under 6'5". You can put a massive lineup on the court and shut the water off for some of these teams. So I know this team will be playing its best basketball in March. They're gonna have to work out Kinks early. Again, another hard non-conference schedule. But I think I know what I'm going to get defensively. Offensively, it's going to be a better shooting team than it was last year. So I have St. John's at 1. Number 2, Connecticut. I have in my notes, Kyle, what's the one word that's going to define them? Unfortunately, it's health. Because right now, Terrace Reed is banged up. We just talked about Braylon Mullins being out with an injury potentially for up to a month, even more. And Malachi Smith is a guy coming over from Dayton that prior to last season had only played in about 20 games the last 2 seasons with injuries. In fact, the year before last, he only played in 1. He got hurt in the first game, and that was it for him. So injuries. You also have Silas Demery, who I think is going to be a stud next to Solo Ball. It could be one of the best guard duos in the entire country. He's banged up right now. So health-wise for Connecticut, that's going to be huge. But Solo Ball comes back. You have Demery. You bring back Alex Caravan, who can challenge for Player of the Year in this conference. What a blessing it is for them that that he decided to come back steady in all facets, leader, culture, can shoot the ball. Everything that you'd want in the college player, Alex Karaban is, and he comes back as well. A good freshman class with going to have to be thrown in the fire here if Terrace Reed is banged up to start the year, but they will still be very good. They added guards where they needed it. Very good freshmen, very good mix of returners. Connecticut's going to be right there. I give the nod to St. John's for now.
Jake, if you ever want a job at Road to the Garden, you always have a spot on our team, man. That was fantastic. Let's throw around some hot takes. What are we doing talking about basketball in October if we're not going to throw around a few hot takes? I think that, like you were mentioning, Cope, that we break down this the coaches poll in different tiers. I think the coaches got it right for the most part. Like, I would flip Villanova and Georgetown at 6 and 7, and I flip DePaul and Xavier at 8 and 9. I do not think Xavier is going to be all that good year one at all. And DePaul has arguably, get this, DePaul has arguably the best trio of returners coming back for them in Layden Blocker, CJ Gunn, and NJ Benson. It's either that or Creighton with Fedor, McAndrew, and Jason Green. So look out for DePaul to not finish in the bottom 2 or 3. I'm not saying that they're going to make too much noise, but as we get up closer to the top, you gave St. John's the nod, and they're in the same tier. I'm going to go a little hot here. I don't think that they're in the same tier. I think UConn is in a tier of their own, and St. John's is one tier below them. I watched a lot of North Carolina basketball games last year, and I was impressed with Ian Jackson in spurts. Wasn't overly impressed with his complete body of work. Bryce Hopkins, first team all-conference in the preseason. I'd like to see it. He sat out a lot of last year and the year before that with the ACL. So I'm not saying that, he's all of a sudden got his, what's that movie with Kevin Durant, Thunderstruck? Yeah. I don't think he got his powers thunderstruck away from him when he tore his ACL, but I like to see it. I don't have an objection to putting him first team all conference in the preseason, but he's got to go out there and do it. Joe Sonone, he's a younger guy from Arizona State. They're going to be relying on him heavily. He's third team all conference as well. And Dylan Mitchell, I am very high on Dylan Mitchell, unless you put him at the free throw line or ask him to score the basketball. He's very good at everything other than scoring the basketball. I think last year at Cincinnati, he missed 18 free throws in a row, I believe it was. So, just a little fun fact. No, I am. This isn't me bashing St. John's, right? I do think they're a top 10, arguably top 5 team in the country, especially at the end of the season when it's all said and done. I have confidence in Rick Pitino that they're going to be playing their best ball towards the end of the year. This is not bashing them at all. I'm nitpicking for things that I don't think are perfect in October. So, cheers to them for that. But UConn, I do think, is on another level. Like you mentioned, Silas DeMary and Solo Ball, they could be the best backcourt duo in the country. One guy that we didn't really touch on with UConn too much, Alex Karaban coming back. His veteran leadership for that team, him and Hurley have been together for 4 years already. So that's going to be special. I am so high on this UConn team. Terrace Reed, another first-team all-conference guy coming in. He's banged up right now. Their non-conference, Villanova has a harder non-conference schedule than UConn. Villanova has the hardest non-conference schedule in the Big East, fun fact, which I'm not sure I would have done in Willard's year one, but per Evan Maya's strength of schedule, Villanova is number 1 in the Big East, which... But no, I do think UConn's going to be tested early. They might drop some of these games. They will drop some of these games early on. They're not going to go undefeated in the non-conference, even though they are traditionally very good in the non-conference. This is a team that could win a national championship, and I would not be surprised if Dan Hurley's cutting down the nets for the 3rd time in 4 years this March.
And that's a bold take too. Not even that bold, but it's just something that's so hard to do.
Yeah.
That you just expect somebody else to do it, which very well could happen. There's a lot of great teams in college basketball. I mean, I think Purdue is obviously very, very well positioned this year, but we don't need to talk Big Ten on this pod. I don't think I have much to contribute, to, everything you guys just said, but I think the best player in this conference this year will be Zuby Ejiofor. I just think he took such a leap last year, especially what you saw in the Big East tournament and getting toward the end of the season. He's just a force of nature, and I very well think he could be the player of the year in the conference. I think he might be the favorite to do so, but among the favorites, at least, Karaban, being there as well. But I don't disagree with Tommy with your take of UConn being in a tier and then St. John's and their own below that as well. But those two teams are going to be very, very, very close and in a battle all year. And when those two play, it's going to be appointment television. So if you guys, Villanova fans out there watching this, or Big Five fans in general, if you do nothing else all year in Big East basketball besides watch Villanova, watch these two teams play when they meet up, because that's going to be appointment television, not just for Big East basketball, but for college basketball as a whole. Maybe even some NBA fans too will want to tune in. I don't know. We'll see.
Two very calm, reasonable fan bases, UConn and St. John's. Everybody's always said that their fans are quiet,
the most pleasant,
and polite.
yes,
very pleasant. That game in the Garden is going to be absolutely insane. UConn, if you all listening haven't been to the Big East tournament, first of all, I highly recommend you go there. But when UConn plays, it is deafeningly loud with their fans in there. So when they come down to play St. John's in the Garden, it's going to be, you're going to want to watch that game.
Yeah, and I was there when they played in the semis last year. And obviously the resurgence of the St. John's fan base last year was a sight to see, but you mix that in with the typical UConn crowd coming down from Connecticut and wherever else they may hail from. It was a sight to see, and it was loud. It was fantastic. Definitely, if you haven't been, definitely recommend for sure. All right. One final thought from you guys before we wrap up here. Tommy, you are our guest. We'll start with you. One final thought for Villanova, the Big East, college basketball as a whole. One thing to wrap up this episode.
The thing that's on the top of my mind right now is I just got an alert on my phone that Tyon Grant Foster, I'll tie it back into the Big East, is granted another year of eligibility. Yeah.
Wow.
So, good for him. It's impressive to see. That was what was on the top of my mind. But without getting distracted, for Villanova and Villanova fans this year, just hang on. Just enjoy the ride. It's not always going to be pretty, but it is going to get better as the season goes along. This as it stands, I mean, listen, for this team to make the tournament, they're going to have to win a couple of these non-conference games against some of these better opponents, and that's going to be really hard to do with the injuries that they're facing right now. Zion Stanford in a boot and Devin Askew. Bryce Lindsey didn't play, but I think that was just an illness, so I think he'll be back. But you get the point. These guys are banged up already, so I don't think that this is a tournament team. I would not. I'd temper your expectations, but still enjoy this team. This is the first year of building something special on the main line for Kevin Willard. It's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but I think at the end of the year they're going to be playing some pretty good basketball. The next couple of years is going to be really fun.
Hope, how about you?
Yeah, just a Villanova thought. Tom, you're absolutely right. So hard in this era of college basketball to win right away at a new spot. And I know it's not that far from the DC area, and it's not a conference that Kevin Willard is not familiar with, but so hard to build a winner year one. He retains one coach. He only retains two players, three if you count Wade Shiddick as well. I'll throw him a bone there. But Kevin Willard officially hired a little bit late, too, because they had the Sweet 16 run. Like, there's so many factors that just make it hard to win year one that the patience run out on the main line because they haven't made the tournament in 3 years. But it's a lot to ask to have this team be a shoo-in in the tournament year one. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to win in some really hostile road environments. We're going to find out a lot about them early with the marquee non-conference games that they have. But that's the thing. I'm confident that, Kevin Willard stabilized Seton Hall. He went to Maryland, and hey, 2 tournaments in a Sweet 16 while he was there, and it wasn't exactly a glamorous end to the Mark Turgeon era. So I'm confident that this is a place that he will win down the road in the new era of college basketball, with essentially the salary cap. Villanova is going to have every resource available, every dollar available to be good. This is a multi-year thing, even if it doesn't come to fruition, and maybe you don't see it year one, which you want to see. It's definitely a long-term play, as Tommy is alluding to. Tommy, before we leave, I have to say one thing to you, though. So we had a bet last year. We bet a beer on who would finish higher in the standings between Georgetown and DePaul, who, of course, prior to last year, were unfortunately the perennial cellar dwellers in this conference. Georgetown finished 7th, and DePaul finished 10th. However, DePaul swept Georgetown and beat them 3 times. They beat them twice in the regular season, and they beat them at the Big East tournament, where DePaul almost went in to knock off Creighton. So I'm willing to void last year and double down again. You take DePaul, I'll take Georgetown, and we make it 2 this time, responsibly.
For 2 beers.
Yes, responsibly, of course.
Responsibly, yeah. Can we throw a cheesesteak in there?
Absolutely.
Oregon steaks?
Yes, he's speaking my language.
I'll just come with for the ride, but yeah, that sounds good.
You got to pay for your own, though.
I'll pay for my own.
Loser's not covering you.
I never said. I mean, I'll make a bet with myself, so that way I have to pay.
Do you have a deal,
regardless.
Tommy?
We got a deal. I remember you like Oregon steaks. You guys got to get out to the county. I had a steak at Verona Pizza the other day. It was phenomenal. Out in Maple
To my list.
Oh, yeah, well, listen, we've been asking all of our guests from each college that we've had on what their cheesesteak spot is. So we're gonna have to make a list, but that's one that's gonna have to get added for sure. Where exactly is that?
It's in Maple Glen.
Maple Glen, you said. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Montgomery County.
Very
It's
familiar.
worth the trip. The pizza's really good too.
We'll have to make
Add
a
it
trip.
to the list.
We'll have to make
Add
a
it
trip.
to the list. Also, while we're on the topic of food, is there any new food options at the Finn this year? What do we eat?
Are we foraging anything different?
I hope so. Whenever I've been at the Finn, the concessions have been closed. They need a they need a revamp. So I sure hope so. It was tough. It was tough during the end last year. They moved the Chicky and Pete's from downstairs to upstairs so that everybody could get it and not just the ones with the fancy tickets, which I thought was cool.
That is cool.
But yeah, I mean the hot dogs and the turkey sandwiches just sitting in the grab it and go fridge. We all the staff and all the workers, they work very hard to put that together, and they're always very friendly. So shout out to them. We need to allocate our resources a little bit better. Or some of that NIL towards.
I was going to say, if it's going to take away from the NIL money, I don't know if everyone's going to be happy about that. If that's the sacrifices the fans are going to make, I don't know.
We have 11 rotation players. I'd be okay with 10 rotation players and a good cheesesteak on the concourse.
It's a good deal to make. That's a good deal to make. Tommy Godin, thank you so much for coming on the pod. We very much appreciate you breaking down the Big East, breaking down Villanova, and what should be an exciting first year for Kevin Willard and company. But thank you, as always, for taking the time to break it down today.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. It's always fun.
Of course.
Always a class act, by the way, thanking the Aramark workers at the Finn for their service. Class act as always.
Yes, very much. Cope, any final thoughts, too, before we get out of here?
Now, excited for the Big East. Kind of excited for the Hoyas, man. I'm just saying. They're going to be feisty. They don't have the star power. They don't have 2 NBA players, I don't think, at least like they did last year with Sorber and Mike Capivi. But, yeah, I will see you at Oregon Steaks. Who will be the winner, we will see. We will void it a second time, though, if one team sweeps the other. What do you say?
Love it. Love it. Right. I don't have too much confidence in my Mons, but... Damn it! I'm gonna be right. I'm gonna be back.
You gotta stick to it, regardless, though.
All right, no backing out now.
Everybody, go follow Tommy Godin on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. As well as the Full 40 podcast, Road to the Garden. You know where to find all of his stuff, but definitely does great work there. So make sure you go follow him there. And of course, if you want to have more of this, Big 5 Pod at Big 5 Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and of course our YouTube. Previews are going to keep rolling for the rest of this week until we have our final one on Monday. November 3rd when the season starts. So be on the lookout for all of those continuing, and we'll see you at the next one.